theatre, an entire industry shut down by a global pandemic. In the Wings is a collection of interviews with writers, composers and creatives whose work was affected by COVID-19. In this series, we will shine a spotlight on those productions, featuring live performances by West End stars and emerging artists. These are the stories of those shows, waiting in the wings. Episode 4, Terror at the Sweet Shop.
Gavin Brock, really looking forward to this interview. Terror at the Sweet Shop is your new show. If you'd tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into doing this show and how you got into being a writer.
No, absolutely. Well, I work as a primary school teacher, and I've always been a writer ever since I was a teenager. So in the run-up to discovering Terror at the Sweet Shop's the source material, I'd just written a musical review for a primary school based on the works of Roald Dahl. So I was very kind of immersed in that world.
And another Welshman too.
And another Welshman from the Rhondda Valley, South Wales.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So when I came across the book, I kind of enjoyed all of kind of like the more gross out aspects of it and all of that sort of thing. And I thought that would kind of appeal to a family audience. And when I saw the writer was looking for somebody to adapt the musical, I sent him a couple of songs over kind of based on George's Marvellous Medicine and Fantastic Mr. Fox, and he really liked them. And this has a real flavour of all of that with, kind of the more gross out elements and kind of things like all of the sweets and the witches and all of that kind of thing. There was a definite flavour of Little Britain in the source material as well. There's one song, I don't know if I can talk about this really, there's one song in it which hangs on a plot point where one of the characters, in order to get rid of the witch, releases the world's kind of stinkiest fart into the sweet shop.
Very Dahlian, yes.
Very Dahlian, and very kind of Little Britain. And I remember kind of reading it, that what really appealed to me about it was there was the children drove the story. So for the first half of the story, it's really written for an ensemble cast for performers, for 5 main performers around the age of 10. And the second half of the story then focuses more on the development of the grown-up characters. Okay. So there's something really for all audiences.
That's terrific.
I like the kind of the subversive nature of his work, really, because, in Roald Dahl's universe, the grown-ups are not necessarily the good guys, but for the most part, it's about children rebelling against authority. And kind of my way into Terror at the Sweet Shop, really, was to look at it as a commentary on politics at the moment, even though it's ostensibly a family show about, children taking power from a witch who's trying to take over the world. With all that's going on in America and the UK at the moment, I think kind of approaching it through that lens of, people not listening to each other anymore and people being seduced by sweet-talking people, and trying to get your voice heard is kind of the central message of the whole thing. So
what stage was the show at in the middle of March?
Okay, so we've been writing it since late 2016, and in that time we had a showcase at the Beam Music Theatre Festival at the Theatre Royal Stratford East, and it's also been selected as finalist for the Styles and Drew Award,
wonderful,
the Mentorship Award in 2018 as well. We had a full workshop at the Other Palace for a week, featuring some fantastic West End talent, including children that have been in School of Rock and Caroline Will Change and all these things, brilliant young cast. And we got it up to that point, and we were just about to take it to the Maltings Theatre in St Albans, ready for October, when COVID struck and just kind of put everything on ice.
Is there talk about, when this is over, that there should be a resuscitation?
We're hoping to. They said they're going to push their programme back into next year, so hopefully around this time next year we'll be preparing to put on a full production.
Father, please could I talk to you? It's been 2 years now and I know you're blue. No, please don't say, just go on and play. Could I talk to you? Look, Dad, I don't mean to be a pain, but does TV and beer really ease the strain? The warm caress won't quite heal the mess. It might just make a person feel again. Remember once you would rush when I scraped my knee. Remember once you would smile and we laugh and be free. Once I didn't have to wish that for just once you would turn around and see. Hey Dad, it's me. Dad, look, I don't mean to be a pest, and I know you're the grown-up and you know best, but a microwave meal was never part of the deal. Back when Mum would get us up and dressed. Remember when we were 3, you'd have love to spare. Remember when we were 3, you'd get out of that chair and you'd show us so much love that now it's gone, feels just so hard to bear. You were there, yes, you were there. Dad, would you mind if I bend your ear? There's someone right here who'll never disappear. Ask me nice and I'll go grab you another beer. Dad, could I talk to you? Could I talk to you? Could I talk to you?
What's your musical background? You wrote both the music and the lyrics. Are you self-taught? Is this something that you studied in school? How do you come about?
Well, I've been doing it since I was a teenager. I discovered Alan Menken and Howard Ashman like everyone else, and Little Shop of Horrors, which I absolutely adored, and kind of subsequently got into Stephen Sondheim. So in my world, you know, as I was growing up, while everyone else was into pop music,
Sure.
you know, I was into Sweeney Todd and this other kind of musical language. But my uncle was a musician, and he had all this equipment that he kind of gave to me, and like literally note by note, not really knowing anything about musical theory, I was able to kind of construct songs. So my first adaptation was Jonathan Harvey's Beautiful Thing when I was 15, and my music teacher at the time said I should connect with him and let him know I was doing it. So I wrote to him, and his agent wrote back in no uncertain terms that I needed to cease any more writing on it.
Welcome to the show business.
Yes, that's right.
We're a loving crowd.
Yeah, and thereafter I tried to find something that was completely out of copyright to start work on. And I watched a documentary about the life of J.M. Barrie, which I found very interesting.
Sure.
And I spent about 7 years writing a musical called The Man Who Wouldn't Grow Up, talking about how the characters kind of evolved from his biography.
Yeah, Finding Neverland, I thought
Only
was
for Finding
one of the
Neverland
best
arrive.
movies of its year for sure.
Yeah.
You know.
That's it. And I remember when it came out, and it was Johnny Depp and Miramax, and it was like, there's the copyright issue again, so I have to cease work on that. And then Gary Barlow ended up writing the musical of Finding Neverland, so it ended up being that kind of situation where it was, you know, the underdog in the whole scheme of things.
Comes February, March, and the world changes. What happened to you, to the production, to all the people working on it, and where does it stand right now?
So, I mean, we were in the process at that point of kind of taking what we'd done from the workshop and neatening up the edges and making sure we had the full score and a renewed script and everything with all the changes that had happened when obviously COVID happened. And gradually we kind of realized that the October production was very unlikely to happen, and for a long time we didn't know if theatre was even going to come back realistically. I think it's kind of been a good time for writers, because all any of us really want is time to kind of sit down and knuckle away and do our writing. But I think with the anxiety that goes with that, I think a lot of people have found that it's very hard to kind of get into a creative frame of mind. But that said, I've been working on a couple of new projects since then and trying to take advantage of the time.
Do you feel that this time period has affected your outlook on things, on the life generally, and has that filtered down and percolated into your writing?
Who knows? I mean, it's hard to say. You can only kind of judge that kind of thing in retrospect, I think.
I think
you're
right.
so immersed in it. I think even when it came to writing Terror at the Sweet Shop and constructing the characters, what I kind of had to do was channel myself into them in a very real way and think, well, how does this kind of cartoon character relate to me in some way, and how in my life? And I think that's what gives musical theatre its kind of voice, when you actually put yourself into it. So I think maybe a few years down the line we're going to look back and see that there are particular themes that reflect, the anxieties of the political time or the pandemic.
You got brains, you got smarts, you got spunk. Kid, you're a work of art, so how come no one sees? They walk round like living lobotomies. You try to state your case, but they think you're absurd. You open up your mouth and they don't hear a word. It's just another day in the life of the nerd. And so what? No one sees your expertise. Would even make Bill Gates turn green. So go ahead, go be mean. One day I'll earn more than the Queen, but till then I don't mean to offend. And yes, I'll do your homework if you'll be my friend. It's just another day in the life of the nerd. Still we're always on hand to bail you out when you don't understand. It's like a language only we know, so should it be any surprise to us? It's like when you guys socialize, and voila, there it is. Your little nerd is one big technological whiz. Thanks so much. Hope you enjoyed. It's nice to see you for once not annoyed, and it's amazing what we're capable of with just a little less judgment and a little more love. Still, you never hear them say that it was me who saved the day, just like every other day in the life of the nerd.
You're a school teacher. Mm-hmm. How old are the kids that you work with generally?
I'm primary level, so all the ages up until 11.
Okay. Do you find that working with kids educates you for your writing?
Oh, for sure. I think one of the things I've definitely learned is to not write down to children, to not patronize them, because children take in an awful lot that I think adults generally aren't aware that they're taking in.
I think you're right. I think I think it's a sin of modern modern children's storytelling, is that there's this talking down to children, and there's sort of a whereas in the old days they didn't do that. It was from the child's point of view and the wonderment of childhood.
Absolutely. I think Roald Dahl is the embodiment of that. He's able to kind of get down on his knees and kind of look around
like,
at the environment as a child and kind of perceive it like that. I mean, there are certainly benefits to working with children as a musician. because I've kind of gone into solely music teaching. So being able to, on a technical level, know what children's voices can actually do is very, very beneficial as well. So being able to kind of stage musicals and things and work with them and kind of see what ordinary children can do is usually amazing. It's usually, you know, when Tim Minchin writes Matilda, he doesn't write everything in 4/4. And things that I think adults would struggle to get their heads around. Children naturally pick it up by osmosis. You know, they think they understand a lot better than people give them credit for.
Yeah, no, and also I think they're fearless.
Yes.
You know, a talented child, they'll oh, you got a script I got to learn? Okay, so they just plow through it.
Absolutely, and the actors that we had as well, Jack Meredith, who was one of the children in Caroline or Change, he played our Oscar in the workshop. He threw himself into it. He said he used to go down the street, like imagining like some of the songs going on, like he was kind of hiding behind pillar boxes and things like that, like he was chasing the witch.
They just have the. It's just the joy of being in the theater and getting the attention and doing what you love.
It's the joy of play, isn't it? I think as writers, that's something we need to tap into all the time. I've enjoyed working on a new project that is kind of in development called The Aftermath, which is about gun violence in the US. And I'm kind of exploring country and western as a possibility for the musical language of the piece.
How interesting.
And kind of doing some research on how to make that theatrical as well. So, you know, they work very well as ballads, but kind of making it a dramatic form is something else in its own right. But
sounds exciting.
I hope so. It kind of started life as a two-person because of the COVID situation. I'm kind of aware that we're going to have to pare things down quite a lot to get things on.
I think you're right.
And I think you know, theatres above pubs are going to see a bit of a renaissance when we come back. You know, kind of small musicals are going to make a bit of a comeback. So it was originally conceived as a two-man musical, but inherent within that is the stasis of two people in a room. So I've kind of expanded it outwards for it to be a 5-person ensemble. So there's a trio that comment upon the action that's going on, kind of bring you in and out of different characters and things like that.
And I think it's also important to remember, you know, you shouldn't build a suit around a button. You know, yes, you're 100%. I think you're 100% right. We are going to have to economize as we move forward. We can't. Nobody's going to be coming out with Les Miserables, the sequel. But people do go to theater to experience an event.
When I was younger, just a slip of a wish, no older than about 105. We lived in hunger and we'd barely a stitch. It took all my darkest magic to simply stay alive. But now I'm older and I've seen what I've seen. Been round the block and back and everywhere in between. I gotta say, I pray it's only a phase, 'cause nothing quite enthralls me or truly appalls me quite like kids these days. And you wonder why we're on the skids these days. Noisy troublemakers, liars, thieves, and fakers. It's time somebody came to take care of their wicked ways. Kids these days. You think your little sproglets are made of sugar and spice, the perfect bundle you've been dreaming of. In point of fact, their heads are crawling with lice, with the kind of face that only a mother could play. Too love, too small for prison, but too big for your knee. Weeping and waiting like some demon-possessed banshee. A red-hot tantrum if they don't get their ways. Foul, ungrateful spawn hardly know that they're born. I tell ya, kids these days only ever listen to their it's these days. Yeah, just snatch and grab it. Ooh, I gotta have it. Say, ain't nobody gonna take care of their wicked ways. The sound of children's laughter, well, it fills up my heart with gall. But this
How do you see theater evolving as we come out of COVID?
Well, I have a feeling that because writers have had their time to get their heads down and do lots of writing, that there's going to be a bit of a renaissance in British musicals, particularly at the moment. I think the days of the blockbuster musical and Andrew Lloyd Webber kind of getting on the stage and getting things in the Palladium the first time out are not going to be, you know, what it was. I think there's going to be a lot of fresh voices kind of making their names in small community theatres, in pub theatres, in you know, small ensemble musicals.
And if that's you, would you give up teaching and move to London and live the decadent life?
I have to say, teaching is in my blood. You know,
We've got better sushi here.
for sure.
Yeah.
No,
The
but
Welsh sushi, I don't recommend it.
no, I do love working with children. That's I think that, you know, that's something I'll always do, even as a professional composer. I'll always keep my hand in working with children.
That's great. That's great. Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your stories. It's an inspiration to see what you've done. I think you have such a colorful musical. I can't see anything but great success for it. So congratulations on where you are so far and where I'm sure you're going to be going very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.